So, Ian, thank you very much for joining Energy Live News. It is obvious that the coronavirus pandemic and this crisis has transformed our lives in various sectors. So the first thing I would like to ask you is how does ILEM Energy manages to face all these challenges brought by this pandemic?
Okay. Well, obviously, ILEM Energy as an energy providing business is classed as an essential service. So we were able to continue to continue to operate our sites and our power generation. Clearly, there's some challenges that we face in trying to do that because our ops staff that are running the sites on a day-to-day basis have to interact. And that presented a certain challenge to us, but we were very quick to embrace the measures that were needed. And I think that goes with the culture in this type of sector, that we have quite a health and safety conscious approach to what we do, and that was, put us in good stead, and we were able to implement some sound working measures. We're also able to defer some of the activity that's non-essential, just to concentrate on operating our assets. So we continue to do that, and we faced a few challenges there. One of the main ones being that if we find that our staff are affected or their families are affected by COVID-19, then clearly they can be taken out of the business, and that has an effect on the available resources. So we continue to face that challenge and try to manage that. And then from a broader perspective in operating the business, we have managed to close our office, our head office, and everybody, and we did that instantly when the measures were initially announced. We were very quick to be able to instigate home working. And we have, fortunately, again, we have all the systems. We're used to quite a lot of our staff home working anyway, if not all the time, certainly intermittently, because we're based in Salford, but we have activity all over the country. So we certainly have a little bit of experience of doing that anyway.
Probably you have been asked very often what ILEM means. Is there any, I just wonder if there is any hidden message behind this name.
Funnily enough, it is a question we've been asked. What I should say to start with is when we were first looking to rebrand, once we sold our business, a substantial part of our business to Centrica, we lost our brand at that point, so we had to rebrand. And we looked at all the obvious, names for energy businesses, something energy, something power, etc. And then we have an international business to a certain degree. So we have activity in South Africa and Mexico, and we historically have been a lot more diverse than that. And when you start looking at brands across lots of countries, it becomes even more challenging to use the traditional sort of name. Somebody's always got that name.
Of course, yeah.
So we had to look a little bit outside of the box, and it was actually our chairman, Mr. Tim Scott, that came up with ILEM Energy. Some people say Wylam, Elam.
Yeah.
It creates a bit of a talking point. Ultimately, we see it as a brand. It will become a brand over time, and all the questions about what it means and what it is will disappear because it will just be recognized as the brand.
Yeah.
It actually stands for, or what it describes is the matter that came together to form the Big Bang.
Wow, it's really interesting. Yeah.
And I learned that as well, because I wasn't aware of that. So our chairman came up with that one. Where he came up with it from, I have no idea.
Okay. So your company has recently brought 27 megawatt of flexible generation online. Correct me if I'm wrong. in Manchester.
That's correct.
So it has been completed during these challenging conditions created by the COVID-19. The thing that I would like to ask you is how difficult it was to complete it during this period.
How difficult?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I would say challenging is probably the right word. Clearly, we were at the end of a process of installation and building those projects and moving through the more critical commissioning phase, just as this pandemic and the restrictions started to bite. So we really were at the back end of those requirements, but because it's quite often said that to build a project like these sort of peaking projects or any construction project, to do, say, 90% of the project is relatively straightforward. It's always the last 10 or 5% that is more challenging. So we found ourselves in that period with the added challenge of the restrictions around COVID-19. We also had multiple agencies on site to assist with the final commissioning. So it wasn't just the Elim team, it was also representatives from the genset supply, from MTU in Germany, and some other HV specialists, voltage specialists on site as well with us. So, and representatives from the DNO. So there was multiple agencies on site trying to coordinate that activity, keep everybody separate and social distance applying, make sure that PPE is available, make sure that the site had adequate facilities just to accommodate that amount of people and enable them to wash and everything else. So that added a little bit more cost, a little bit more management time, and certainly probably added to the overall time that it took. With very careful application of those measures and control and the management on site, we were able to work our way through it. And we're really pleased that we were able to ultimately achieve the end goal, which was to make those projects live, which we've managed to do.
Of course. Can you tell us a little bit more about this natural gas plant? We know that it is for balancing the national grid and enable further expansion of renewable generation. Is it correct?
Yeah, I mean, these types of facilities are not unique to Elim, of course. There's plenty of people building these types of facilities. There is certainly a need for capacity of this type. Obviously, it's a facility that has both facilities, the one we have in Trafford Park in Manchester and the other one just slightly further north in Skelmersdale. Both grid connected within the DNO area. We are running these plants not as base load, but running them intermittently. Typically in the afternoons or any peak time, peak demand time throughout the year. Traditionally, that's always been, say, winter afternoons, when it's cold and dark and renewables are not providing the input that they would, you would hope they would do, and something has to step up to meet those peak demands. And traditionally, that's been flexing large-scale power generation from coal or other means. As we know, that has been declining over time. As we see the move away from fossil fuel derived generation to a large degree as a base load. Mm-hmm. So we are able to use these facilities, use these types of gensets, which are very quick in response to a call to start. So they're remotely controlled. They can be brought online within a few minutes and ramped up and brought up to speed very quickly to meet that demand when it occurs, continue to run and turn off again when demand is gone. Mm-hmm. And they're very flexible in terms of that type of operation.
I know that you have mentioned before a few measures that you have taken in order to protect your team and, of course, your clients during this lockdown period. Are there any other special measures that you have taken during this period, and which are the main concerns from your client side during this period?
Okay, well, when we're talking about gas peaking, there isn't necessarily a client involved. There are our own facilities we're building for. So the interaction there is with the other agents or the other stakeholders, such as the DNO or the suppliers of the equipment, etc., that are involved. And I've mentioned how we've interacted with those. But more broadly in our business, where we have a behind the meter product offering, which is really targeting a customer base, traditional intensive energy users such as food, manufacturing facilities, anywhere where there's a large energy demand. So our model there is to obviously sell that concept of being able to take those facilities off the grid, again at peak times of demand, or even for a base load portion of their consumption. And the interaction with those clients to be able to enable those projects means that there has to be site attendance, we have to do surveys of the site, and all of these things are really on hold at the moment to a large degree. So we are continuing to be in contact with a number of customers in that sense, and working towards what we can do as soon as restrictions are lifted a little bit. But it is actually causing a delay in us being able to move forward substantially with a lot of those types of projects at this time.
What it will be like in the post-corona future, the potential of renewable energy, and if you think that the pressure for saving money from electricity bill will be higher after this crisis, after this lockdown?
Well, I think there is no real substantial change to that business model. I think that is just a fact of the way that the world works in terms of energy supply. So I think there will always be a place, regardless, for on-site generation. Will always, and I think that's a growing demand, because traditionally, when you're taking power from the grid, you're being charged substantially for the wheeling and all the hidden aspects, the non-energy aspects of your bill. And those can be avoided substantially by on-site generation. So I think that concept remains in any scenario. And I think if we extrapolate as to where we're going in the energy sector, we can see an increase of renewables. That will happen. There's all of the drivers are in place, the carrots and sticks are all in place to incentivize the uptake of renewables. So we're going to see a growth in that area, and that means more intermittency and therefore more requirement for a peaking type model, and energy storage from batteries is going to play a pivotal role in that in the future as well. We're just starting to see that revolution happen now, but I think in time we will see a lot more uptake of battery energy storage, combined with more and more people taking themselves off the grid, and also taking that opportunity to decarbonize when they come off the grid. So we won't see gas-fired generation in the longer term. We're going to see more use of renewables on site, more use of solar, more use of wind potentially on site.
Actually, this was my last question for you. What role do you think that technology would play in helping the UK energy sector continue its process of decentralization and meet its ambitious targets for reducing carbon dioxide emissions?
Yeah, I think that the only way we'll substantially achieve the reductions that we're all looking for is through every aspect. So we're going to see closing of coal-fired power stations. That's largely happened already. We're going to see less use of natural gas ultimately in the future, certainly as a baseload fuel for generation. Gas is an interesting fuel because I think it enables a transition to a much more renewable focused world. So we're in that transition now, hence why we feel confident about gas peaking rather than baseload. So, you know, we're going to see more and more of wind. We're going to see substantially more solar potentially happening. And I think to a large degree, the solar will be even more on-site roof mount solar rather than acres and acres of farmland being used for solar, ground mount solar traditionally. So I think we'll see a combination of things happening there. I think, as I mentioned, battery energy storage is at the heart of this. It really is an enabling technology for renewables. Not just the ability to store energy and release it at times when you need it, but what you can do with a battery, the technology, the speed of response, the way that you can manage frequency on the grid, and the way that you can trade energy from a battery using algorithmic trading, for example. These things are all absolutely new, cutting-edge technologies, and we're going to see much, much more uptake of those in the coming years.